Anyways, I'd like to welcome the next panel, which is about to come out. Oh, it got so quiet. Thank you, guys. Okay, let's give them a round of applause.
Got it. We're in our right seats. People are trickling in. Can you guys hear me? No? Hello? Hello? No? Okay. He's waiting. Oh. The clap trick worked, bud. Nice job. Hello, everyone. My name is Sheena Shiravi. I am the Director of Consumer Communications at Eaze. Thank you all for being here today. We are very excited. We had such a great turnout, and thank you to our lovely speakers for joining us. I will give their intros. So to my left, we have Varuni Palacios. Did I say it right? Palacios, dang it, sorry. She's the head of marketing for Miss Grass, where she leads brand marketing, audience development, and strategic partnerships. And prior to Miss Grass, she was the director of audience development and social media at Goop. There are a lot of similarities. I love it. Yeah. Then we have Kristi Knoblich Palmer, who is the co-founder of Bay Area-based beloved edible company, Kiva. They have nice non-medicated samples back there. She is also a founding board member of the CCMA and serves as president of the board of the CCIA, two of California's top trade organizations working to normalize the cannabis industry. And she's an industry veteran. We were just talking about that. Then we have Leah from PAX. Leah Mansouria is the senior manager of retail marketing at PAX Labs in San Francisco. She has over 15 years of experience. She's worked with top brands like JanSport, New Balance athletic shoes, and Victoria's Secret, leading their retail and visual marketing around the world. And last but definitely not least, we have Nidhi, Handa. Nidhi, is the founder and CEO of LEUNE, which launched last fall. She is using her background from luxury retail, communication, and entertainment to build LEUNE in a thoughtful and innovative and forward-thinking way. So welcome to all of our speakers. Yes, so as Fahad kind of mentioned, the realities of cannabis marketing, AKA the restrictions, and how do you overcome. So to that point, I would love to hear from our panelists. Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you guys have faced marketing a cannabis company and how you've overcome them. If we want to start maybe from Nidhi, put you on the spot.
Is this good enough?
You can, yeah.
So I'm definitely the new kid on the block on this panel. I launched my brand in the middle of November on Eaze. So the challenges that I've seen are probably really relative. I think we've heard today a lot of conversation about how quickly the industry is evolving. So even some of the challenges since I started my brand, the new regulations dropped. So, there's really minute-to-minute changes in regulations that impact not only marketing, but the way that you sell your brand, the way that you run your brand. I have to be honest that from my perspective, I'm really trying to focus on the positives. I think that we've heard today in both of the earlier panels a lot of the sort of, the issues with legislation. We've heard about, the struggles with raising money. The marketing part is really, I think it's really important to use a mindset of what can I do? This is not that different from the alcohol industry, the tobacco industry, the pharma industry. We have a lot of the same restrictions that have to do with responsibility. So, I'm really trying to build a brand in a conscious way, but also not focus so much on the things I can't do, not putting a billboard within a certain distance of a school, to me, is not really a hurdle. It's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like, we're selling drugs. Like, let's be responsible. So yeah, I tend to be more of a glass half full person. Yeah. I'll let you take it.
Yeah, and to your point is that it's not impossible to overcome these challenges. My perspective really comes from the retail vertical and how we can really amplify our brand at the consumer touch points. So, what I've learned is that because PAX is a national brand and we sell our devices in many different states, there's different regulations that pop up from state to state. So when I go to put together a program, coming from the corporate world and the apparel world, we didn't have to deal with all of these different regulations state by state. So for instance, in Washington, it was dropped on me that, oh, you can't place anything if it's over $35. It was like, okay, well, first of all, who decided $35 was the number? Who is this person that gets to go around and police this 35, and how are you going to prove that's what I spent on it? So it's all these types of things. They're not impossible, but they are hurdles that are unexpected. So we just have to educate ourselves. Luckily at PAX, we have a great in-house team that keeps us up to speed with what's going on so that we are educated, but everyone doesn't have that. So it does take a little bit of extra work on our part to make sure that we are compliant, but it's not impossible for sure.
So I think some of the unique challenges that you will experience in the cannabis industry is right now, I think, access. So you can put a billboard up, you can launch an amazing marketing campaign, but if you're doing that in a city where there's only, say, one dispensary and 1 million people, then you're sort of wasting your marketing dollars because people can't then go in and actually purchase your products. So that's one of the big challenges that we're encountering right now is you can launch a campaign and talk to everybody on the planet, but they can't go and in turn actually purchase your products. So you have to think a bit outside the box and how you can deliver a message and then allow that person to then walk into the store and actually make a purchase. So
Or launch those billboards in an Eaze deliveries.
So one thing that we were talking about in the green room, which I think is really interesting, is that all of us have brought experience from our former brands with us to help us make strategic marketing decisions where we are now. And coming from Goop, and even before Goop, I was at NBC Entertainment, so I have a media and entertainment background. And so I know paid, owned, earned, and social. And so social we use to build community. Earned we use to build authority, and own we use to build authenticity. Paid we scale, and so we're not able to lean on paid to scale, and so we're really trying to look outside of that model to find ways to grow as quickly as we want to spread our message as quickly as we want to. And so being glass half full has been really helpful, trying to maintain positive, productive, solutions oriented creativity, but that I think has been the biggest hurdle, and learning how to conquer that on a daily basis has been fun.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for the audience, one of the biggest kind of channels of marketing most consumer brands have is Google AdWords and Facebook. I know Eaze's social has been shut down so many times. So just for those of you who might not be in the industry yet, those are some massive channels. And so I think it's great to hear kind of some of the creativity that you guys are using to go about it. So actually, you brought this up. What are some of the best practices that you pull from other industries to apply to the cannabis industry? And also tell us a little bit about how you approach kind of thinking about audience segmentation, and how do you kind of build your brand around them?
So Miss Grass is a contextual commerce platform, which means we create content in different verticals, including education, culture, beauty, wellness, science, to help our consumer make really conscious decisions about how she purchases. Similar model to Goop. creating content to provide context on purchasing decisions, especially in an industry that for the mainstream is so new, has been really helpful. Tactically, beyond not having paid, we've been really leaning heavily into partnerships and new medium platforms like podcasts, which we're having some success with. We really try to maintain an attitude of, like, you know, leaning on successes or learning from failures and not looking at failures as failures, but learning opportunities, and as Kate put it, really quickly pivoting. As far as audience targeting, really good question. If we were going after, if we could lean on paid or more traditional mediums, we would go after audience demographics. We really lean on audience psychographics, so what they're thinking, what they're needing to make decisions, how we can empathize with where they are in their current journey. And so leaning into audience psychographics as we create that content, as we distribute that content, and as we further improve our shopping experience across all of our platforms is really important.
It's very helpful. Thanks.
From the products and edibles perspective, best practices that we have used over the years have really focused on education, and there's so much misinformation and just a vacuum and a void of information. Resources like Miss Grass have done a fantastic job of presenting information to new and existing consumers, but we get kind of stuck in our own little bubble in the cannabis space, especially when we live and breathe it every day. And we forget that there's so little information out there for consumers, right? People walk into a store, or they go onto a delivery service platform, and they don't know where to begin. So laying out clear, easy to digest information is key, and also not delivering too much too soon. So really helping people kind of go on a journey and discover bits of relevant information as they either unveil your package or as they explore your website, so that they can really kind of digest in small pieces. And then on the demographics and who we're trying to reach, I think there's a whole new group of cannabis consumers that are coming into the market. We're still reaching those kind of early adopter types, so people who are willing to take a little bit of a risk, and they don't mind kind of being the first in their friend group to try something new. Those people are in the cannabis space and are still kind of flocking to it. But that next set of consumers, those folks that are a little, they want to make sure that what they're doing is legal. They're not comfortable kind of playing the line or pushing the envelope, right? They're a little bit more, they play things on the safer side. So that'll be, I think, the next really huge wave of people that enter the market in probably the next, like, 2 to 5 years, and a lot of that will hinge on federal legalization. So we have that, I think, kind of those two groups of consumers that are with us now and coming soon.
Kristi, one follow-up question for you. Kiva's been around for almost a decade now, right? 2009?
Yeah, 2010.
2010, that's crazy. How has your audience changed, and how have you kind of catered to that evolving Kiva consumer?
Yeah, so we have always positioned ourselves to the new consumer. So in 2010, 2011, that new consumer, there wasn't anything serving people at that time that was safe, consistent, tasted good, professionally labeled, and that consumers could trust. So we've always been trying to attract a consumer that's looking for consistency and trust and a predictable experience with their edibles. Our consumers aren't necessarily looking to get blasted or looking to experiment with a cannabis edible. They want to know they're getting 5 milligrams, and if they want to one day take 10, they can very easily take 2 pieces instead of just 1. So the Kiva consumer, we've always positioned ourselves to be reliable and give people an experience that they can count on every single time. And that really hasn't changed today. There's still, people still want that. They wanted it then, they want it now. There's just a lot more people for us to reach now.
That's great.
I would say that bringing some of my past experience into this, one of the big things that I wanted to make sure is that education at the point of sale was really at the forefront of what I do. If you know our devices, you will know that they are a bit more expensive than other vaporizers that are on the market, but there's a really good reason for that. There's a lot of technology built into our devices. There's things like session control and setting different temperatures. So that's a lot of information to put out to consumers, especially when attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter thanks to our lovely digital devices. So how do you bring that education to validate why we are more expensive? It's a difficult proposition. So as I've been in my position, I've also brought this idea of testing and learning really, really quickly. If you were to look at my task list, I have about 10 to 12 different test and learn exercises that I want to get done in Q2 because we have to learn quickly in order to adapt, especially as things continue to change in this industry very quickly. The second part of your question was around consumers, correct?
Audiences.
Our audiences.
How do you approach the target audience and branding to them?
It's an interesting question for PAX, and the reason that I say that is that we are a tech company that produces these vaporizer devices for both oils and flour. We have multiple brand partners, so not only are our brand partners' audiences our audience, but we also have our audience on top of that, so it starts to cast this really wide net, right? We're working on it. We're working on narrowing down that focus and how we can be more focused in what we do, but we do realize we are in a unique situation where our audience is very, very broad. It's a good problem to have, but it is a problem to figure out. So we are working, in all honesty, working through that a bit, but it's an exciting time for us to figure it out and to dial in a bit more.
How do you guys think of kind of prioritizing those audiences? Or do you prioritize, or is it just a different tactic for different audience?
You know, I think it's different tactics for different audiences. You know, we realize that, you know, there's the wellness consumer that's has PAX. There's the person that is the typical stoner that is using PAX. We're figuring out how to prioritize them, but we are very clear in identifying who those different groups are at this point, for sure.
Important, yeah.
I think from my perspective, I see that all of us on this panel and probably most of us in this room have this tremendous opportunity to create a new conversation around cannabis, right? As marketers, we get to tell a new story. We get to create a new narrative. We get to break the meme of the guy sitting on the couch stoned out of his mind with pizza. Like, we actually get to explore some of the things that probably brought us into the industry, the exciting, you know, efficacy of all of these different cannabinoids, the things that we don't even understand yet, but the curiosity. Those are the things that I really, really try to lean into when I think about the content that we're building for our Instagram or our marketing campaigns. LEUNE is definitely a brand that's dedicated to that middle lane consumer. This is not necessarily a wellness consumer, and this is not necessarily a consumer that needs to see like girls in bikinis to feel like they need to smoke pot. Like, this is I'm excited about the legal market. I like to get high, and I want to feel good about it, and I want to feel responsible about it. I want to know that I am shopping from a brand that is testing their product, that is doing everything in a responsible way. And so much of that leans on what all of you ladies have said: education, education, education. And, you know, it's, to me, super exciting because I think most of the industry, from my perspective, is white space. We get to create the story. We get to tell the story. A room full of women in like this very niche industry that happens to be one of the fastest growing in the world. That's bananas, objectively bananas. As far as demographic is concerned, I will say, not to get too much into gender politics, we are at a female conference, so maybe it's okay. As a female founder, I think I hear on a daily basis men tell me how excited they are about my female brand, whatever that means. I think that from, at least the way that I'm building my brand, it is 50-50. I don't really see why my brand, my vapes, test at 83% potent. It's gonna get you high if you're a man or a woman, or, I don't really understand the value of, at this point for my brand to be gender kind of in one boat. So I really try to stay middle lane. Having said that, I think there's massive value as a marketer to create stories that are female friendly, meaning women make spending decisions for every other consumer category, right? We're buying clothes, we're buying food, we're buying beer, like we're gonna be buying the cannabis for the house, right? So I doubt we're gonna be super amped on like buying, from brands who are marketing to us in a super misogynistic way. And, and wellness, which is awesome, and I am a consumer of cannabis wellness products. I think it's awesome, but again, sometimes I don't want to feel bad about, I just want to get high. That's my Friday night journey. It's not about sleep or anxiety. Like, it's just that. So, I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. It does. That was great. What experience from your past industries and past professional life do you bring to the cannabis industry, or has been really useful?
I think oddly, I started my career in a family business or in the luxury jewelry business. Oddly, the most relevant, shockingly to say, I think what I see with cannabis right now in brand segmentation and the challenges that all of us deal with in the dispensary, meaning understanding the illicit space of cannabis was all about, price, right? I mean, most of us have experienced this. You walk into a dispensary and it's like, what's the cheapest thing? That's what the bud tender says before you even ask. And you're like, but maybe I don't want the cheapest thing. Like, maybe I want the coolest thing. Like what's the newest thing? What's the organic thing? The jewelry industry was really valuable to me in this, right? My family business, we had watches from Swatch to Rolex to like $350,000 watches. 40% of the watches had the same $25 ETA movement in them, and a lot of times the only difference between these watches was the name on the dial. That is like the epitome of like brand segmentation, right? And here we are in a space where we're creating brands that are speaking to different kinds of consumers, the wellness consumer, the consumer who likes the girls in bikinis, the consumer who likes the sort of middle lane. And they're all valid, and there's space. And we all know this. We all have the numbers. We have the data. We understand that the consumer is already there, whether they're shopping in the illicit market or the legal one. So now the fun part is we get to create brands that speak to the audiences that we want to cater to.
Yeah. And actually on that, a follow-up, and maybe, Ms. Graster, you can speak to this too, but how do you think about your product roadmap in kind of relation to your audience? We talk about this educational arc. Kiva, I believe you guys started with the terabytes. I actually don't know if you started with the terabytes.
Yeah, the Kiva bars.
Yeah, so how do you think about, what's the next product you're gonna put out, and kind of what's the evolution of your business based on kind of the brand or audience, or does it just kind of happen organically, or do you guys have a plan for it?
So for us, we curate a CBD marketplace online, and a lot of our decisions about what ends up in that marketplace are consumer driven and data driven for sure. The other day we went through an e-com assessment to figure out what products were selling the most, and at what point, we added a certain type of product. Did that impact positively or negatively the rest of the assortment? And so,
can you share data from that? Maybe general top categories?
Kate's in the front row. I think that there are just a ton of tinctures in the marketplace, and there aren't a lot of CBD vapes. And there's a huge explosion in CBD for beauty and wellness in particular. Women, like the consumers of Goop and Well and Good, want to dabble in CBD because their friends are talking about it, or because it's legal now, and so they feel safe and they feel like they can come out of the cannabis closet. And the safest way for a lot of our women is to do it in the beauty space. And so we do cater to need states. So if you go on our shop, you'll see product curations based on need states, like sex, like beauty, like wellness, and food. There's a lot of tinctures, and keep making them. But I think what we try and do is listen to what the customer is engaging with, listen to what they want more of, lean on our data to make those really strategic decisions, including potential launch of Miss Grass proprietary product at some point soon. Sorry.
I like it, the curiosity gap.
Yeah. So what the customer wants is what we give them.
So on the topic of new products and new product innovation, so data to the cannabis industry is still very new. I just got done telling somebody here at the event, they were commenting on the Camino gummy product that we came out with, and during the thank you. Thanks. And during the product development process, that product actually started as a hard candy, and then data became available for the very first time in the cannabis industry, and we saw that gummies were the winning leading category even over chocolate. And so we went, well, okay, let's switch this up and let's make a gummy instead of a hard candy. So definitely having data available is like absolutely key. Otherwise you're developing products in a complete vacuum. And that data, we still only have like a year and a half to look back on. So it's still very new. But for the Kiva new product development pipeline, we're always trying to come up with ways to solve consumers' problems. So how can we help? How can we come up with a product that is microdosed and gives you the most amount of control? Or how can we deliver a specific effect? So for those who are looking for sleep or something uplifting, they can find a product that really helps lead them down the correct path for the effect that they're looking for. So we're always trying to find new fun like sweets and non-sweets to infuse with cannabis so that we can help bring new consumers into the fold, and then also give existing consumers something else to fall in love with. So.
Yeah, and for us, it is really about technology. You know, we are a tech company at our core, so looking at the ways that people are consuming. When microdosing became more popular, looking at how we enhanced the app and added session control, where you can go in and your device will actually shut off once you've reached that level of the dosage that you want to set. Do you like more flavorful smoking experience? So you can set the temperature on your device. So we're looking at the ways that as new consumers come in, how are they evolving in the space? What are the things that they want out of our devices, and how can we build that smart technology into what we do? Data is really important, and I definitely agree with you on that. And sometimes it can be a bit difficult to get the data that we necessarily want and need. We don't have any of our own retail, so we're really working with our partners and leaning on them to help us get data back. So it is about us building really, really strong partnerships so that when we need to make a call and we need to sit down and have conversations about what's the next step for us, we're actually seeing what's happening, and we just aren't sitting in our office going, oh yeah, that's great, we're going to go ahead and add that. One thing that we've been thinking about on the retail team is how do we set up some type of council where we meet with our partners in-house, and we maybe take a day or two to talk about what we're seeing in the industry and be able to share in a forum where we're all mutually benefiting from one another's knowledge. I think that those types of bonds and those types of partnerships are going to continue to fuel how we will continue to innovate in this space until we maybe get to a point where we have enough data. But at the end of the day, this community is a community, and partnerships are all about all of us getting better.
That's awesome.
I'll call you up.
And that's why I love PAX. For us, I will say it's been a little bit different. I launched the brand on Eaze specifically because I was really concerned about data. Eaze is a technology platform, so in that vein, I have data. I know what products are selling. I know day to day what SKU is selling and how well it's selling relative to, you know, what my lab test results are. If like what levers I can push and pull is, you know, are consumers buying more because they like a certain flavor, or is it because of the potency? It's because of the potency. You know, I think that all of us as intelligent business people, we're obviously not risk averse, otherwise we would not be sitting here. But I do think that there's this tendency to really want like all of this data and this specific map of what we should create for our consumers, and to a degree we can get that information not just from cannabis but from other spaces. So looking into flavors, so we have disposable vapes and we have pre-rolls that are infused with terpene flavor profiles. When I think about flavors, I think about consumer trends outside of cannabis and what people like and what they don't like. It's very tempting to come to market with a matcha flavored whatever, but then I'm like, I really hate to be stuck with all these matcha vapes when they fall out of favor, you know, like, and I don't personally like matcha. So I think that, you know, some of it is also just putting yourself into the trenches, and actually, I love trying other products. I love trying other brands, and not just because I'm like, they're my competitors, but because I actually want to create products that I would consume, that my friends would consume. I think that's really, really important, you know, because before we become too sort of robotic about it, I think just getting in the trenches with the people who actually consume your products is really valuable. And, you know, the experiential marketing actually does a great job of events, and even, you know, industry events like this are insanely valuable to think about, you know, what the next SKUs should be.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. And actually, a word on that for those of you interested, we do put out yearly State of Cannabis reports that kind of look at people trends, product trends, wellness trends as well. Some interesting things that I found in 2018 was actually the naming conventions. I mean, we kind of touched on them, but in Ms. Grass, their effect-based, need-based naming, I think 7 out of 10 of the most popular vapes on our platform last year were named after kind of how you would want to feel. So I think that was really interesting too. And it makes sense because you have a lot of kind of beginners, as Kristi was talking about, you know, now that it's legal, more people are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about it. And so you have a lot of kind of ready to use products being really popular. Women and baby boomers are two of our fastest growing segments. And if you think about the different, you know, a disposable vape or a vape that's kind of easy to put together, or a pre-roll or an edible, low dose edible, you guys have 2.5 milligram mints as well. These products are doing really well, and flower's not going anywhere, kind of that stoner is not going anywhere, but you're starting to see that the pie of products definitely expand as we kind of welcome more consumers into the industry. So glad to hear it across the board. So I was going to ask how you guys have seen the industry change since you've joined, but for those who are newer to the industry, I would be curious to hear kind of what attracted you to it and how the experience has been since you've joined.
So for me, what attracted me to the industry was I love experiences in store. I hate when I go into a store, you can tell that everything is truly about just the transaction. And for a long time, dispensaries to me felt like they were just about the transaction. And then I looked around and I started to notice that I would go into stores and it was like night and day. It was like there was a place for me to sit, and there was a place for me to talk to somebody, and I could actually touch and feel and smell, and it became a whole experience and a reason to go to the dispensary beyond just going for the transaction. So I saw this about maybe a year and a half ago. I was up in Portland, and I was there for a trip, and I said, I'm going to hit up the dispensary real quick. And I went to this dispensary, and I was completely blown away by what I saw in that retail environment. And I was like, wow, this is so exciting. I think I want to be a part of this. But I kind of put it back in the back of my mind. And then I started using packs, and then this opportunity came up. And when I heard about it, I was like, oh my goodness, I would love to be on the ground floor helping set the standard for what this could be and really help everybody elevate to where I can see this industry going. It was such an excitement in me that I don't see anywhere else within retail environments and retail spaces happening. There's just such a huge opportunity that I was just excited. I was like gangbusters. There was no doubt in my mind that this was what I wanted to do. I didn't know where it was going to be my point of entry. I was so happy that my point of entry was at PAX. But when I started to see that, that really is what excited me and sparked me to come over to the industry. So I'm glad to be here, for sure.
Great.
For me, it was a couple of things, and we joke about this in the office sometimes, and I actually bust out in tears because I'm really that excited. So first, before Goop, before NBC, I was at WWE, so I worked with a lot of men. Yeah, we can talk about it after. So I worked with a lot of men, and I was done with it. Like, I was done with it. And so to be a part of an industry that's growing so fast and right now being led by women was like, it's my life's work. It's so exciting and incredibly fulfilling to be a part of. I'm not going to break out in tears or anything. The second thing I think is my personal ethos, and we'll get into that into the conscious consumerism panel. My personal ethos is jump and you grow wings on the way down, and so I feel like we're all doing that together too, which is really exciting. And the thing that we joke about the most in the office is, for a marketer, it's really fucking hard right now. And so cracking that code is what keeps me up at night, and so I'm here for it.
One other, since we're running into our end of time, also add your piece of advice that you would give.
Okay, so my biggest piece of advice is to just form partnerships, link arms, be a good partner, all ships rise, ask what you don't know, share what can help somebody else. Right now, especially where we are in the industry, it's all about strategic partnerships, collaborative partnerships, brand partnerships, all sorts of partnerships. So my advice is, from a marketing perspective, do partnerships.
Yeah, and I think, like, we having on to this question about how do we kind of continue this trend of bringing women together, but that was a huge point of this event today, was really partnerships, to foster those, you know, strong women leaders and those who want to join the industry in partnerships. But continue.
What was the first question again?
Well, how have you seen the industry change?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So the industry has changed a lot since I got into it, because I love to tell the story. Like, when we first got started, it was all about hiding. It was like the race to be second. So nobody was marketing, or like our marketing campaign was a photo of our chocolate bar, and we would print that out at Costco, like size 8x10, and put it in the window of the dispensary, and like that was the campaign. And so it was, and we had a competitor at the time that was a great competitor because they had more resources than we did, and they like paved the way for cannabis chocolate bars at a time when, again, it was a race to be second. No one wanted to put their neck out there. So we just kind of very neatly just followed right in line as second place for the first few years. So now the industry has completely changed, and since probably 2014 or 15, now it's about shouting from the rooftops about your brand, and I think people are concerned now about how to meet demand, whereas back in the past you were concerned about going to jail. So two totally different challenges, and the industry, and it's insane to think too that in California we've only had regulations since the beginning of last year. Like, this whole industry in California has been operating in the complete absence of any type of oversight or regulation. Like, that is crazy to me.
And it's been legal since '96.
So we've got this amazingly robust marketplace in California that has only had rules to follow for 14 months. So the changes are huge, and I think the pendulum has really swung from no regulations at all to now we are like under the most intense scrutiny ever. And then I think that's going to start to hopefully fall back a little bit and end up somewhere in the middle where we have reasonable, sensible regulations to follow. So if I had to give advice, especially for a conference with a room full of women, I would say be aggressive. Definitely, if you have a great idea, then pursue it and make it happen, blow it up, get involved, be collaborative, talk to people, network, like just take that idea and like run it all the way through to the end, because this is like a super amazing time and the opportunity is ours to lose. So yeah, be aggressive, and if you have a great idea, like go do it.
Yeah.
My only piece of advice was just be adaptable. The rules today are going to change by tomorrow, and you have to be ready to adapt and adapt quickly. Stay nimble, and just go. And if it happens fast, it happens in the middle of the project, shake it off, get over it, and adapt to the new changes.
Yeah, so I think my question is why I got into this business. Listen, I saw the same opportunity that everybody in this room sees, and I was so excited about it. I am a consumer. I didn't see a product that spoke to me or to my peers, and I thought it would be a great idea to build one. I am a woman of color who is a founder, who has a brand on Eaze that's crushing it right now. So for all the sort of, this is not like to give myself a pat on the back, it's to say for all of the hurdles, it's so possible. This is a very exciting moment in cannabis. We get to be here, and there is an opportunity for us to create exciting brands, to build wealth, to tell stories that it might be once in a lifetime. So I couldn't pass that up. Advice, I completely agree with Leah. Be so flexible. Just do not be attached to anything. The industry is changing minute to minute. It will not serve you or your brand or whatever your product is to get too attached to anything.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that too, something that we do internally at Eaze, we always say, just because we had an idea and it didn't, come to fruition, that doesn't mean it's done. It doesn't mean it's dead. It means it's on pause. And being there for the past 3 years, there were things that we had like a whole list of ideas, things that we would go out 3 years ago when pre-Prop 64, total Wild West gray area that we couldn't do partnerships, for instance, with just CPG brands. And then 2 years later, post-Prop 64, those same partners would come back to us and be like, we could do it now. So definitely keep a list of all of your good ideas too, because you can always, it's interesting to see how much you can revisit them down the line. All right, so we're gonna open it up for questions now. So I believe we will have mics on either side if you guys want to line up. Deirdre, do you have a mic? Not yet. All right, would you like to go? Yeah.
So given that there's so much regulation around trying to do social media campaigns, especially on Instagram, which seems to love to shut any cannabis brand down, whether you touch the plant or not, what are the most effective workarounds you guys have found in social media?
Good question.
Yeah, we got our account shut down the other day. Okay, so I think one thing, you have to, as any brand, you have to be on social. So one solution for scale is partner with influencers and leverage influencers as if they were media units. They have really large followings or really saturated followings, highly engaged followings. Work with them either on a barter basis or a transactional basis and get the same sort of impressions or reach or engagement, click through, whatever your KPI is, that you would look to get from a paid campaign. Partnerships, one thing that's worked for us, especially on social, is leaning into partners that aren't in the cannabis space. So if you look at Miss Grass, we've created and distributed content on Well and Good, Pop Sugar, Refinery 29, HB Fit, and that's also helping us reach a consumer who's potentially still in the closet or not as educated and feeling a little uneasy about her decisions, but we're reaching audiences beyond the people who are already either in the cannabis space or that we wouldn't on an organic basis.
I will also kind of toot my industry's horn of PR and comms. That was
Totally.
For a long time in the beginning of Eaze, that was like a huge kind of lever for brand awareness, just to get earned media and kind of share that. Also, Twitter is great because they don't shut people down. as often.
And we were talking about this the other day. Twitter shows up in organic search results. So another strategy to lean into is if your business has content opportunities, really make sure that your content is search optimized.
Oh, definitely.
Because that's a huge untapped potential too.
Did anybody else have any? No?
I would say ours is pretty much the same, but we also do things like limited release product. So in December, we launched a fuchsia PAX 3 that was married up to the Pantone Color of the Year in order to get more PR and press hits and placement on blogs like Pop Sugar and things like that. Also with some of our charitable projects. So we also had a veterans pod that we partnered with Jetty last year, where all of the proceeds for the sale of that pod go to veterans associations. So having, even though obviously we want to be charitable and do good in our community, you get a lot of press hits and things like that from those types of limited projects where they're outside the scope of our normal universe, but they do good, but then they also pay off for us as well.
Great.
Hey, I'm Deirdre. You guys all mentioned keeping in touch with your consumer and learning from them and sort of delivering what they want. And the industry's gotten better over the last couple of years at knowing retail point of sale data and sort of backward-looking data, but we're still not seeing a ton of forward-looking data of the next consumers and what they, what they're going to want, what they're doing now, some of the stuff you were saying about other flavors, that kind of stuff. So how are you guys getting consumer insights, not data? And how do you feel like you're using them? And do you see that you're getting budgets for them yet, or is it still too soon?
All I can say is on PAX, we just hired a director of consumer insights, and he started about a month ago.
He's great.
So it's going to be great.
Yeah, we do not have a director of consumer insights, but we could certainly use one. I think somebody on the panel earlier mentioned like going into your customers and talking to them, like really trying to, because as a brand, you're not necessarily, a brand like ours, we're not boots on the ground in the stores every day. So it's a bit harder to track those consumer insights and try to predict what the next thing is. That it's totally challenging. But you can look to your retail partners, your delivery service partners, and I think also like real world consumer trends also outside of the cannabis industry. And then I think too, there's a lot of trend setting that can go on with cannabis right now. Like people don't necessarily know what they want.
Yep.
So there's a lot of like, you can ask, if I asked this whole room what they thought about a new product innovation, there's a good chance it could end up like, going off the rails and being something that nobody ever wants. But if you kind of put your inventor hat on and you try to predict what's going to be attractive or what's going to capture people next, it's risky, but there's a lot of reward behind that too when you do get it right.
Just quickly, we don't have a head of consumer insights either. We got us three. But we're really playing around with content and the insights that we get from that feedback of the content. For example, we started doing on Fridays on Insta Stories, which we leaned into a lot more because we see that they drive traffic and even conversion to sales for us. We started rolling out an Ask Me Anything series, so we put out a bunch of questions and we get lots of feedback from them. A big learning that we had in the last couple of months is that our 101 basic educational content drives a lot more traffic and a lot more interest on both our content and shop sites. For example, what is a terpene? 3 steps to roll the perfect joint. That's the content that they're wanting more of, but once they come in through that content, they're easily consuming the other stuff like our plant diaries, how we changed my relationship with my mom, or we got me through grad school. So there is a funnel that we're seeing that starts with the 101 educational content and then gets them sort of down into whether it's culture or science or beauty or wellness. And from there, we can sort of map their journeys through like qualitative and quantitative feedback from either our content site or our shop site.
Yeah, I think SEO trends as well.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Thanks.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Gwen. I'm with Jingletown Cannabis Club. We're a delivery service in of the Bay Area. And I was wondering if you guys mentioned briefly something about like billboard placement. I was wondering if any of you have any experience with just how to give guidance about ad placement, both, you know, physical around the city, billboards, as well as, you know, online ad placement, and how someone can sort of, who's inexperienced, begin to conquer that realm, compare pricing, and come up with a strategy.
I guess I could probably answer that since there are a lot of these billboards.
That is true.
Yeah, it was funny. Our number one kind of most successful growth conversion tactic when we launched in 2014 was word of mouth, because our lawyers were, to your point, really nervous about sticking our necks out and kind of plastering Eaze everywhere. And we got a little bit more comfortable, and I believe it was kind of end of 2016, beginning of 2017 that we actually started rolling out. I think it was like muni ads at first, and our conversion just like skyrocketed. And we actually have an attribution survey, so that's kind of how we measure it, because billboards are a little bit difficult. And so, you know, we kind of, we leaned into that for sure. And then in terms of, I think the creative journey, it was also really important. I think we, like, how do you figure out how to educate through advertising? And a lot of, like, one of the first campaigns we did was a hello, goodbye campaign, you know, like goodbye stress, hello marijuana, goodbye hangovers, hello marijuana. To the point where I had friends being like, oh, I didn't know you could use it for hangovers. And I was like, what? It'll change your life. So yeah, and then in terms of placement, yeah, I mean, placement is much, well, I guess not much easier, but you can kind of work with the media buying agency to kind of understand the impressions of different areas. Making sure you do drive-throughs with those media buyers is really important to make sure, like, pictures are great, but to actually go physically visit the billboards that you're considering to make sure there's no, like, trees in front of it, or, and then obviously it can't be anywhere kind of near a school, so our compliance team and our marketing team work really closely together to make sure that's all buttoned up. And then again, I think Kristi mentioned access, like making sure where you're putting your billboards are places where your consumers, where people can actually access. I guess if it's delivery, then that makes sense. But yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. One of the biggest disruptors with legalization, I think, was the forced introduction of distributors into the supply chain. Cannabis didn't know how to do that. Everyone was used to selling their own products whatever way they wanted to. And I do think it's a necessary evil. You know, brands will need distributors in order to scale. You can't possibly hire all the salespeople you might need. But my question is, how best to get your product's value proposition communicated all the way through an indirect supply chain? So how can brands prepare the distributors to be able to educate the bud tenders so that when somebody walks into a dispensary, they're getting the positioning and the selling that you want?
That's a very good question, and one that I'm actively figuring out. But I will say this, and I actually have one of the salespeople from my distribution company here today. It's support. It's education on every level, meaning my brand employs a brand ambassador that supports the salespeople for the distribution company. That is very important, closing the gap on wherever possible. So understanding that if my brand, I have this lofty idea about what I'm trying to communicate, has to go from my brand ambassador to the salesperson, sorry that I'm pointing at you, and then to the buyer of the dispensary, to the bud tender, to the consumer. First of all, that's not going to happen. Like, I have to be honest about it, right? There are going to be demos needed in the stores. There's going to be education, as many touch points, as much collateral in store, as much branding. I mean, again, this is a very exciting opportunity from my perspective. We all have been into many dispensaries. There is a really huge margin of difference of what you see inside a dispensary. I went to a dispensary today and it was maybe 1,000 feet and there was one little tower of product in the entire dispensary. you don't have to be a retail wizard to know that that's, not the best way to deliver a message. I think that it's just common sense, plus don't take anything for granted. Meaning I'm investing a lot of energy right now in making sure that people like Anna feel supported so that when she goes into a dispensary, she knows how to talk about my product, that she has the ability to really understand my story. And that means that, I have to work 7 days a week, but so be it. I think it's one of the most important things. The retail story is your direct connection to the consumer and should be taken very, very seriously.
Do you think that there's an opportunity for distributors to differentiate themselves on how well they sell products, maybe smaller inventories and so forth?
100%. I think it's evolving like every part of our industry. I think that right now we're all just figuring it out between, the regulations changing and efficiencies and, product assortment. These are things that I think about. What are the competitive products that my distribution company sells? So how will it become difficult for Anna to sell my product when she has an arsenal of 10 other brands? So yes, I think everything's becoming sophisticated. There's a lot of room for growth.
Thank you.
I would love to just add one comment to that as well, and that is no one will ever sell your product like you do. And so I think when you hand your business over to a distributor, and Kiva does we do our own distribution, and then we also leverage those services to other brands. So we have a portfolio of about 9 or 10 brands right now that we take to the stores. So that's kind of like the other half of our business. And so no one sells Kiva products like I sell Kiva products, and no one sells Kikoko products like the women of Kikoko. So you're your own best cheerleader, and you have to support the distributor because we're a great distributor, but we're not miracle workers. And so you really need to provide boots on the ground, in-store support. Your team should be in there supporting the sales rep from the distributor with placement and marketing and events and all the wonderful things that you could possibly come up with, because your fate is in your own hands.
Thank you.
Sure.
Cool. Last question.
Hi, Lydia Page with Simply Rheumatoid. I wanted to know what your top 3 do's and don'ts for online marketing are. And secondly, I wanted to know why no one has started a chain.org or petition yet to try to be able to market on social media, since I've been hearing that you guys keep getting shut down. So
Who says
why
we
can't
haven't
we change
started
it?
something?
Trying, yeah.
We're trying something. We're working on
Yeah.
something. I didn't mean to jump in. Everyone jump in.
Jump in.
You say ads and I'm triggered. Okay, do's and don'ts. Everyone jump in. I think the biggest don't and the biggest do is make sure that your brand message is consistent across every single platform that you market on. You have to do that for the customer and easily explain who you are, what you do, and what your value is, especially in a market where it's so undefined and education is really important. We talked about it a lot up here, especially being nimble and flexible and adaptable is really important right now. So if you can't do that, then this is probably not the space for you. And also, be willing to try anything and don't get your feelings hurt like I do when that doesn't work. Come back the next day and try something else, because I thought coming in that I was like, oh, I came from Goop, I'm gonna figure it out, and I can't figure it out. It's different. And so we're all at a point in marketing where we're able to develop and create our own best practices, and those best practices are gonna change and evolve, but be committed to developing your own best practices and don't look to what someone else is doing as your model, because your model is definitely gonna be different. So above and beyond all, be committed to figuring out what that model is.
I would say another do is definitely differentiate in your online marketing campaign. So there's a lot of, like we always joke, like the best oil. Like, oh, I make the best oil. And you're like, oh, really? Because so does everybody else who makes oil thinks they have the best oil. So tell your unique differentiator, and it should be, you should be able to see it in the first 1 second of looking at your online campaign in whatever format that is. So don't make the consumer like search for your message, just put it right out there and help them understand why you. I would say that's the biggest deal.
And just to add on to that, however you're showing up online, make sure to carry that message through to the in-store experience. Don't be one person online, and then when they get to the point of purchase in store, be a completely different purchase. Let's make sure it's a 360-degree approach.
I think what would be helpful is to clarify something for everybody. These Instagram accounts are getting shut down for one reason, and that is promotion of sale of product. You put a swipe up to Eaze, to a dispensary, to a delivery service, that's a trigger for Instagram. It's that simple. Instagram and Facebook have different policies in that regards. It's very complicated because they don't actually post these policies. But that's the matrix, like that's the whole thing. So I think understanding what, how, and that does require some, I think, fancy footwork in trying to understand what the rules even are. But beyond that, I think everything that these ladies said is just gospel. Just, you have this phenomenal opportunity to pivot when it's necessary, to tell a story that's consistent, to build your brand identity, and then your responsibility is to take that into the store, into real life, and actually be that, which I think we all know is a real thing, not just in branding, but Instagram culture in general, right? Like it's a thing we should all be really thoughtful about.
Yeah. And yeah, just to emphasize and like underline, educational content is a fantastic Trojan horse for getting online and getting in front of consumers.
If I can just give you some tactics to walk away with, because I feel like that was what your question was. Lead with content that's consistent across your platforms. Organic search has an opportunity. Influencers has an opportunity. Organic social has an opportunity. Partnerships and non-traditional media platforms like podcasts and potentially display, where media platforms have their own inventory to sell, is a good place to start.
Great. Thank you, ladies.
Awesome. Well, thank you all to our lovely panelists. And then I believe we have our, go for it.